I make Gordon Ramsay look like he runs a food truck.
You hear that, Ramsay?
I'm calling you out.
Hello everyone, this is Derek with the Tailgating Spot, and with me today is my friend Andrew and his assistant Hendrix. And today we're going to be talking about steak and how to prepare it. So we have a couple of different ways that we're going to prepare steak and show you how you can do or how you can cook and prepare restaurant quality steak without having to break the bank at all. So at this point I'm going to turn it over to Andrew and he's going to get us started.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? All right, so first we're going to talk a little bit about the types of beef that you're going to find in the grocery store. The two types that you're going to typically find are Angus and Hereford. Now, if you are working with Angus beef, it's usually going to be labeled Angus, right, bud? And Hereford will usually not be labeled. I've got two sirloin ball tip steaks here, and I have a T-bone. Now these are Angus beef, and this T-bone is Hereford. And I don't know if you can see it, but this is a cheaper Hereford cut, and there's really not a lot of marbling in it. And you know, this is typically a more expensive steak. And now these ball tip sirloins are very affordable. They have a lot of flavor, and you can see on these that there is some very nice marbling compared to the Hereford, even though that is a much cheaper cut of steak.
How much would you say that, do you remember how much you paid for these then?
There were 4 of these in this pack, and I paid $12.
$12.
And this one was $15.37.
Just for the one.
On sale.
Is there a way that you're seasoning both of them to kind of bring out a lot of the flavor, or are you going to kind of do both the same?
Well, both will be quite similar, but typically I start out with kosher salt, not table salt. Table salt, you want to use that for salting after the meat is cooked, if you feel it needs more salt.
Okay.
And you always want to start with kosher salt. So it comes in this big box, so I always put a bunch in just a little container. And so what I'll do, this is going to be the one, we're going to do one on the grill, and then we're going to do one in the cast iron pan, and then we're just going to kind of compare and contrast, see which we like better. So for both of them, we're going to start out with a generous coating
Now, do you do
of
both
kosher
sides
salt.
too?
Yep, both sides. Don't be afraid of the salt. A lot of that is you're not really gonna notice. It's not gonna be super salty or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be quite generous with it and kind of pat it into the meat. Another thing too is make sure that your meat is up to room temperature before you start the cooking process. And then I only use this salt for salting meat. And then for the one that's gonna go on the grill, we're gonna use a steak seasoning. I've got this Dakota style gourmet blend, North Prairie signature, made right here in North Dakota with sea salt from the sea that is very close to North Dakota.
It's natural.
So in this you've got a mixture of sea salt, garlic, pepper, herbs. Yeah,
Wide variety of
good
good tasting stuff.
So we're gonna pretty generously coat, pat it in. We're gonna flip it, and we're gonna do the same. Nice thing about a steak seasoning that's got a little sea salt in it, when you're cooking it, the sea salt doesn't really dissolve. So when you take a bite into your steak, sometimes occasionally you get a little bit of a crunchy bite of salt in it, and it's really, really tasty. So for the next one we're gonna do in the cast iron, we're gonna season it a little differently. We've, of course, salted it both sides with kosher salt. And now, have you ever had a steak at like a hibachi restaurant?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so this seasoning, it's called the Bamboo Chef. You can find it at Walmart. It's like $4. Find it in the Asian cooking seasoning. This is like the same stuff that they use at those hibachi restaurants that they put on everything.
That's nice.
And it is really good on steak, especially if you're doing the cast iron method. So I'm gonna do a pretty generous coating on both sides once again with this. I'm gonna pat it down a little bit. All right,
That looks good.
So we're seasoned up and we're ready to hit the grill. All right, so we got our grill preheated to 400 degrees, 400 to 450. A big mistake that a lot of people make will be that they just fire up the grill and throw their meat on. Don't want to do that. Make sure you preheat your grill just like you preheat your oven. All right, so we got it's about 1.5 inches thick. So we're gonna go about 5 minutes aside. And we're gonna go right on to the direct heat.
All right.
And we're gonna go, about 5 minutes aside. Shut it, don't touch it, leave it alone. Another mistake people make, they move it around. I mean, you know, some people like the grill marks and everything. Don't worry about the grill marks. You don't need, you know, this isn't Applebee's. This is your backyard, right? Another mistake people make is when they flip, they use one of these. Don't use a meat fork. Garbage. Just chuck it. Tongs. Always. Did that stick into the ground? It did. I don't even know where it went. Anyway. So we're gonna go about 5 minutes. Yeah, say hi.
Yeah, say hi. That is a great thing about being able to take these cheaper cuts of meat and really get a lot of flavor out of them. You really don't need to spend a lot of money to get a great tasting steak.
Yeah, and sirloin ball tip is a very good budget steak. Like when I was in college and I was craving steak, I would go to Walmart and get a couple of those, throw them on my George Foreman.
Yeah.
It wasn't the greatest, it was tougher than hell, but it tasted good at least.
Yeah, I ran into that with the George
guarantee you these
Foreman
won't
too.
be tough.
Uh-huh.
It is flip time. I set a timer for accuracy.
That's looking good.
Looking really good. Grab with our tongs, give it a flip.
So what kind of doneness are you looking for here?
We're shooting for medium rare.
Okay.
You don't want to go past medium. I mean,
I think it's a little too tough then.
yeah. And if you got somebody that wants a steak well done, politely ask them to leave. So about 5 more minutes, and then we will pull it off and let it rest.
Now how long would you say you want to let it rest for?
You're going to want to rest your meat for half the time in which you cooked it. So
About 5 minutes then?
yep,
in this
we
case?
cooked it for, you're going to be cooking it for about 10 minutes, so about 5 minutes. And you don't want to cut into it immediately because then all the juices are going to flow right out.
Right.
So you want that to settle. And then during the resting process as well, the meat is still cooking.
All right. So let's take a look.
Okay. Oh, look at that.
Ooh, that's looking good.
Beautiful. Pull that off and shut our grill off. I have a bad habit of, especially if I'm like slow roasting chicken on my grill, of forgetting to turn my grill off.
Ah, yeah.
And that gets expensive.
It does. It does. We'll grab this.
All right, we'll run it inside and we'll let it rest for about 5 minutes.
All right.
Alrighty, we're ready to cut into this bad boy.
Now you had mentioned some way of cutting the beef itself that kind of helps
Yes.
keep its tenderness.
Yep, we're gonna want to cut against the grain. So in this steak, it's in kind of like 3 segments, so you got grain running in 3 different ways. In this part, the grain is kind of running this way, so we're gonna cut it this way.
Okay.
And then in this one, it's running more this way, so we're gonna try to cut it that way as well. And then this part is like super tender, so it doesn't really matter. But we're gonna cut into this. And then I always cut diagonally.
Yeah, that's looking good.
Yeah, we got maybe a little bit more done than I was hoping for. It's about medium. All right,
Well,
looks good.
time for the taste test.
Give it a shot.
All right, I'm gonna take one of these more well done ones.
I'm gonna go for this one right here.
That is tasty.
Mm-hmm.
That's very good. I'm gonna have another.
That part's a little chewier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, like this cut, it's a little bit, it can get a little chewy,
Mm-hmm.
but it has really, really good flavor.
Well, that's been our first foray into cooking steak. And coming up next, we're going to be showing you a way how to do a cast iron pan style. So it's coming up next. All right, so for this next cooking tip, we're going to be doing a cast iron steak on the stove top and then finishing in the oven. So Andy, why don't you let us know what your style is here?
All right, so first off, we've got a very well-seasoned cast iron pan. It's been coated, the bottom's been coated with a little bit of olive oil. And we've been preheating it for a little bit now. Now, how to tell if your steak is hot enough, or not your steak, excuse me, your pan, how to tell your pan is hot enough to start your searing process. Just take a little bit of water in your hand and kind of throw it on there. And if it turns into like little tiny beads and starts rolling away, you're ready to go.
That's good to know.
That is occurring right now.
Yeah.
We're good to go.
That's good.
Right on. Perfect. Okay. Now, when you're doing this, we're going to want to work quickly because we don't want to fully cook the steak in this process. So, we're going to put it on first side. Then, we're going to throw in some Irish butter. A lot of butter.
That is a lot. It's almost a
full stick. Throw that in there. The more the better.
The more the butter.
And then we're going to add to that some fresh thyme into our butter. And then about a teaspoon or so of some minced garlic. Swish that around a little bit, get our butter melted.
That smells good.
And then we're going to start basting. Keep basting. Get that garlic on there, that butter. And that thyme's going to work itself into the butter. You don't have to worry about that.
So how long would you do this for?
About 2 or 3 minutes aside. Sure. Maybe, I mean, you just want to get a quick sear. Actually, probably less than that. We're going to do our flip here right now. And look at that.
Oh, yeah, it looks good.
Beautiful. Watch out for splatter. That's going to happen. And baste. And baste. And baste. Be aggressive with the basting. I make Gordon Ramsay look like he runs a food truck.
You hear that, Ramsay?
I'm calling you out. So now, this is important too. You want to sear the edges as well.
Right.
Just kind of turn it over. Need a little more time on that side. Want to get that nice crust, if you will, on there. While we're at it, we'll just keep on basting that butter on there. Keep on basting. All right. Let's check that other side. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Okay. So now we're going to go into the oven for about 4 minutes. And the time will vary depending upon the thickness of the steak. There's my timer. Here it is. So we're going to go into the oven at 400 degrees for about 4 minutes. Whole thing. Don't forget your pot holder. I have made the mistake many times where I'm excited to pull my steak out and I reach in and I just grab it and I burn my hand. Also, be very cautious. You can burn your hand doing this very badly. I was doing a cowboy ribeye one time in that thing and I burned my hand very, very badly. So, you know, maybe wear gloves sometimes too. I should practice what I preach. All right, time to come out of the oven. Pot holder.
It's important.
Okay, and then just like the one on the grill, we're gonna rest it as well for about 5 minutes. Look at that.
That looks great. Smells good.
A nice crust on there. This one was a little fattier than the other one was. Oh yeah.
That's looking good.
Yeah, we got about the same result. About medium rare.
And this method I like, especially in the winter time, because, or if it's raining. I do like to grill in the winter. However, when it's 10 degrees and the wind is blowing, I'm not a fan of running in and outside, because then I'm not, you know, paying close enough attention to what I'm cooking.
Yeah, that's fair.
When you're cooking a steak, don't trim your fat off first.
Agreed.
Leave that fat on. You can trim the fat off after you've cooked it, because when you're trimming that fat off before the cooking process, you're cutting flavor away.
Taste test.
Taste test time. I always like to get fancy and kind of fan it out, you know?
Oh yeah.
Beautiful.
Bon appetit.
Go for this end.
Mmm. That seasoning is really good.
See, I'm torn as to which one I like better.
Yeah.
They both have great qualities, like.
Well, it's
I
the
don't
same
know.
steak too.
But so we're getting different flavors.
We are. It's definitely different than the first one that was done on the grill. It's tough. I don't know. I think just because this one is more recent, I'm gonna go with this one. But for both steaks being cooked two different ways, I say you can't really go wrong with either one of them.
I do like the crust on this though.
Yeah, I definitely got, with having the sear done beforehand and then finishing it off in the oven, that changes up the overall taste for me as well.
I think this might be a little better. But keep in mind too, we introduced a lot of fat to this with the butter.
True.
And we're using fresh garlic as opposed to freeze-dried garlic.
Yep.
And as well as the fresh thyme as well.
But that's the great thing about taking some of these cheaper cuts of meat, adding in those additional elements to bring out a little bit more flavor to your steak.
Absolutely. You know, you don't always have to go all out for a cowboy ribeye, or, which is amazing by the way, or a porterhouse or whatever. I mean, you can, if you're on a budget or if you need a bunch of steaks to, you know, feed a crowd, these sirloin ball tips are fantastic.
Yep.
You know, I mean, and you can marinate as well. That helps get them a little bit more tender. If you want to take them and stick them in a plastic bag and grab a hammer and pound them and, you know, do like a cube steak thing and want to do that, that's great. That works too. Or it's also great carne asada meat if, if you don't have access to flank steak.
If you're looking at serving steak in a tailgating setting, this cut is it's a little bit more cheaper. You can feed a lot more people. If you slice it up the way that Andrew did, everybody gets to try a little bit, and the 5 minutes on each side, it's not going to take a long time to cook and prepare. You're able to feed, you know, a large amount of guests with a handful of these kinds of steaks.
And the great thing about cutting it in this way too, for when you have a lot of people, is then you don't feel obligated to eat an entire steak.
Right.
You know, because like you're gonna have a whole bunch of other sides. You're gonna have your beans, your potato salad, and everything. And you know, not everybody's gonna want to eat
a whole steak,
big piece of meat. You know, so you can just cut this up and fan it out and make a nice presentation, and people can just kind of take what they want.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of a little bit more of a community meat then.
And I want this piece right here.
But yeah, this would be a great addition to your tailgating spread. It's just a nice steak. Well, that kind of wraps up the video for today. This has been our look at cooking steak two different ways, to get with the same steak two different ways, and you can get a variety of different flavors out of them. You don't need to go break your bank for good quality tasting meat. So thanks for watching. Thank you, Andrew, for showing us your ways of the meat, and we'll see you next time.